Next Wednesday at 9 on Thames, the award-winning Survival Special returns to focus on the extraordinary work of the wildlife artist Wolfgang Weber. He's a man who'll go to any lengths to get close to the animals that he's sketching. It's a unique insight into an artist's eye view of the natural world. A world whose beauty and diversity is celebrated in a brush with nature. A Survival Special next Wednesday at 9 on Thames.
Back to tonight, and over on Channel 4 in just a few moments, there's comedy with the Golden Girls.
Tomorrow at 9 on Thames, Rumpole of the Baileys called in to defend an aristocrat who's under suspicion.
Murder? Who said anything about murder?
No one yet.
I know what I saw, Mr. Rumpole. To be quite honest with you, I've got no doubt about it.
This is intolerable.
Please, Mr. Rumpole, don't excite yourself. You've reached an age when that might be injurious to your health.
A trial of strength for Rumpole, tomorrow at 9 on Thames.
You must remember, babe, a kiss is just a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
This perfect moment was created for Harveys Bristol cream, the best cherry in the world.
Harry's such a poppet. But of course, one can only eat the after-dinner mint after dinner. He was terribly understanding, as were the Smythes and the Fitzsimmons. The evening went swimmingly until...
I can't believe you're all doing this. Leaving the empty envelopes in the box.
Dear Freddie, such a stickler for tradition.
After 8, it is the after-dinner mint, after all.
This trolley.
Let's try one of the new Uncle Ben's curry sauces tonight. Got the chicken. Just add the mild, creamy korma sauce. Cook in the oven, full of fragrant spices and delicious almonds. And serve with Uncle Ben's rice. Wonderful.
Uncle Ben's. Perfect results every time.
Kelly LeBrock reveals the essence of man.
It's hard to define. It's in the way he laughs, the way he smiles, in the way he kisses. The way he's so stubborn. He's always trouble. That's a man. And when he holds you close, it's in the way he smells. Brut, the essence of man.
Back in the 5th century, 2 Persian monks stole a secret the Chinese had been guarding for 2,000 years. That secret was silk. Now experience the feeling of silk on your face with Rimmel Silks. Enriched with silk and other natural ingredients for a softer, long-lasting finish. As you can see, she looks beautiful in silks.
May I recommend from the menu chick sticks made with prime chicken and smooth potato.
Wrapped in golden breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs, yes. Your chick sticks, sir.
These taste great. You look like a penguin.
Duck.
I said penguin.
I said duck. Chick sticks from the Birdseye Steakhouse. The stamp of great tasting meat.
I'm not a pheasant plucker, I'm a pheasant plucker's son, and I'm only plucking pheasant till the pheasant plucker comes. And I've been drinking.
In the first league game of the European Champions Cup, Rangers will be looking for a 2-point lead at home to Marseille in their quest to get to the final. Catch the highlights on Thames tonight at 10:40.
This is Thames Television. Now today's national and international news from Trevor MacDonald at ITN.
From the headquarters of ITN, News at 10, with Trevor MacDonald.
More street battles as France rejects the EC trade deal. Irish police foil IRA plans for a new bombing campaign. MPs freeze their own pay, at least for now. And how a radio phone-in led to rape. Good evening. The French Prime Minister Pierre Bérégovoy has threatened to veto the deal on agriculture agreed between the EC and the United States. French farmers have been on the streets again, demonstrating in defense of their way of life and in defense of their subsidies. Today they fought riot police and burned American and British flags. The European Commission backed the EC-American deal today, saying it didn't involve any cuts in farm output beyond what the EC had already agreed. But that view carries no weight in France tonight. Our Europe correspondent Libby Wiener reports from Paris on the continuing French resistance and on the implications for Europe and for world trade.
On the streets of Paris tonight, farmers battling with police to try and sabotage a deal to free up trade across the world. Their numbers were not that large, but the police were there in strength. The clash is fueled by a very genuine anger among the farmers that a way of life is about to disappear. Just yards away in the National Assembly, deputies were debating the GATT deal. The Prime Minister, Pierre Bérégovoy, saying France would veto any agreement that jeopardised France's fundamental interests, and the Assembly looks likely to back him.
The community should not accept some unequal treaty, and it looks like a very unequal treaty.
The GATT treaty is a very difficult thing, but it's not possible to leave our countrymen like hostage in this treaty.
But as the symbolic burning of the EC flag today suggests, France still faces a serious dilemma, whether the farmers' interests override those of the European community it has so solidly supported in the past. The French have few options left to stop the deal. In the EC Council of Ministers, they can vote against it, but it can still be passed on a majority. Their last hope is to invoke the so-called Luxembourg Compromise, where they can plead an overriding national interest. But it's a complex form of veto and may not succeed in forcing the GATT to be renegotiated. The farmers are keeping up the pressure on a government already seriously weakened. Today's protests in Paris are likely to be repeated across the country in the next few weeks. Some are threatening more serious violence.
France has to stop the GATT, and we will break everything till it stops the GATT.
If the price to change agriculture is to change our landscape in a desert, is to make our villages empty, if to see all the people who work for us disappear, if this is what they want, they will make it.
But there is also a feeling here that the farmers' cause may already be lost. So despite all the sound and fury, it's still not clear here tonight what France can or will do to stop the GATT deal. The fact that the European Commission appears unanimously to have backed the deal and said that it's within the common agricultural policy reforms has left the French government more isolated. Trevor.
Libby, given everything that happened in the European Commission today, do the French farmers have any idea at all how they might win this battle?
Well, Trevor, I don't think they are very sure. I think that's part of the problem. Some people here have compared the plight of the French farmers to that of the miners in Britain. They make up a much larger part of the population than anywhere else in Europe, and there's a great sentimental attachment among the rest of the population. To some extent, it's being seen very much as a last stand.
And how do you read the French government's strategy now? All sound and fury?
Well, partly. They are in a very difficult position. They've always been solidly pro-European in the past. President Mitterrand has wanted to be seen as very pro-European, and here they are sabotaging something which has been negotiated directly by the EC with America. It's still not clear whether he'll want to go down in history as the man that wrecked that deal.
Libby Wiener, thank you very much indeed. Help tonight from the Republic of Ireland in the fight against the IRA. The Irish police have given their British counterparts vital new information about weapons and explosives dumps and about IRA safe houses here on the mainland. Our Ireland correspondent Andrew Simmons has that report.
Highly placed security sources say the breakthrough came after Irish anti-terrorist squad detectives carried out 2 raids last Friday. One was in a flat in the city of Limerick on the southwest coast of Ireland. It was raided as a follow-up to a search of another flat in Ranelagh, a southern suburb of Dublin. According to the sources, bomb-making components were recovered. But they say the real breakthrough came when IRA documents were found in an intensive search. The sources say the documents give details of UK's safe houses and arms and explosives dumps in Britain. Anti-terrorist squad detectives have been mounting a massive search for bomb-making equipment and arms in the southwest of Ireland called Operation Silo. Apart from recovering large hauls of guns and ammunition, they also uncovered intelligence on IRA suspects involved in the UK mainland bombing campaign. It's understood this led to the latest breakthrough.
This is regarded as quite significant by the Gardaí in that they believe they have uncovered a new IRA engineering unit, a unit which contained a number of people which were known as sleepers, people who were not known to them previously as IRA activists.
The sources say the Irish Secret Service has relayed the information to Scotland Yard. The IRA's British campaign has been increased in the past 2 months. A bomb at the Sussex Arms in London killed 1 civilian 6 weeks ago. Since then, police and security services have uncovered 35 kilos of Semtex at an East London shop and thwarted 2 other planned attacks. British sources tonight said it was too early to comment on the significance of the Irish raids. But it's understood the IRA Christmas bombing campaign may have been hindered by the new intelligence. Andrew Simmons, News at 10, Dublin.
And in Belfast in Northern Ireland tonight, an IRA man has been shot dead by the police. A police car was chasing his car and forced it to stop. The patrol then opened fire. A second man was arrested. There's to be an inquiry. MPs try to set their own example to the country today about national rates of pay. They voted by a big majority for a pay freeze, for this year anyway. Their salaries will stay at just below £31,000 a year. Our political correspondent Joe Andrews reports.
MPs were told tonight that even though they were voting themselves a wage freeze next year, when it ends they'll be allowed to catch up with the civil servants with whom their pay is usually linked. This year Whitehall got 3.9%, so MPs will get at least that next time.
In other words, I know this is a point to which many of my right honourable friends attach importance, we do not intend that MPs should be permanently disadvantaged by 3.9% in comparison with the civil service.
But for now, a backbencher's pay is frozen at slightly under £31,000. Some feel it's hardly high reward for a working week of up to 70 hours, which involves preparing for debates, work in Commons committees, and listening to your constituents' problems when you get home at the weekend.
What we are being used as here today are the stalking horses to justify the pay freeze that they're going to put on the public sector to many of the lowest paid in this country. That's what it's all about tonight, and it really is gesture politics.
As far as I can calculate, we're saving about £1,000 a head per member in the substantive motion. That's about, I don't know, £700,000 worth of public expenditure. Well, that's a flea bite in terms of the public expenditure total.
How would it look to the country at large if we as a group were seen to be voting ourselves a pay rise, as others were witnessing pay cuts? We would be worse than pickpockets, taking off others and hoping that they were looking the other way.
In the event, the government had a majority of over 200, with Labour's front bench abstaining. But the government may well be making a rod for its own back by promising MPs a catch-up deal. How long will it be before every other public sector worker wants one as well? Joe Andrews, News at 10, Westminster.
There's to be an official inquiry into the way the royal palaces, including Buckingham Palace, are run following the fire at Windsor Castle. In particular, it's to see if proper safety precautions are being taken of the sort that insurance companies would demand if the palaces were insured. The review was ordered by the Commons Public Accounts Committee. The former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev said today that Russian President Boris Yeltsin should try to unite all those Russians who want change. In an exclusive interview with ITN, Mr. Gorbachev talked about the difficulties in the way of a Western-style market economy. Tomorrow in Moscow, opposition parties in the Russian parliament will meet to try to work out how to halt Mr. Yeltsin's reforms. ITN's James Mates reports from Moscow.
Mikhail Gorbachev and his team of economic advisors have been watching the steady collapse of the Russian economy. Unable to help, their advice ignored. At his foundation in central Moscow, the nightly news reports have told him of collapsing industry and hyperinflation. He told ITN this evening that those who criticized him have learned how tough it was reforming Russia.
Gorbachev's critics are in power now, and they've got us into the gravest economic situation. They did this by using cowboy methods of reform.
His words come at a time of deep crisis for Russia's President Yeltsin. Conservative forces in the country have made him abandon many of his economic reforms. At every turn, he seems to be giving ground to hardliners. Just today, he sacked the head of the country's main television network because the military didn't like the reports they broadcast. A few hours later, he fired his information minister, Mikhail Poltoranin, again at the behest of hardliners. They are effectively holding Yeltsin to ransom because next week, the country's highest parliament meets. This Congress of People's Deputies is dominated by conservatives and has the power to strip President Yeltsin of most of his powers. Mr. Gorbachev believes the portents are bad and wants a national government, including all those interested in reform, to protect the country's young democracy.
President Yeltsin should turn himself into a national leader and unite all those who are committed to the policies which will reform the country.
Just 6 weeks ago, Gorbachev was being publicly humiliated by Yeltsin, who locked him out of his office and confiscated his passport. Now he says, for the country's sake, the feuding must stop.
There is no way I will allow my personal problems to become more important than the problems of Russia.
So conciliatory words, but after all the bad feeling, there's still no reason to believe the government that now rules in the Kremlin is about to listen to him. James Mates, News at 10, Moscow.
And our correspondent James Mates joins me now live from Moscow. James, did you find Mr. Gorbachev still seeking a national government role?
Well, he wouldn't be drawn on that specifically, but it may be on his mind. He is continuing as head of his Gorbachev Foundation and will continue to try and contribute. His problem, of course, is that there's no sign President Yeltsin wants to have anything to do with him yet. In fact, Trevor, I suspect the opposite is the case.
And James, will Mr. Yeltsin survive the Congress of Deputies?
Probably, but this Congress is crucial. It was elected back in 1989 in the days of communism. Many of its members are former communists. Yeltsin knows that he doesn't have the votes next week unless he makes compromises now and buys off the hardliners. That's why he's been making the sort of concessions he made today. If he doesn't, he could lose. His reform policies, many of his reformist ministers could be swept away. It's unlikely, but if it happened, it would be serious.
James Mates in Moscow, thank you very much indeed. Coming next on tonight's News at 10, more of the day's news, including why thousands of miners are quitting the coal industry even before the pit closures review. The street where a woman went on a blind date and how it all went horribly wrong. And sharpening up for Europe, why British businessmen are not ready to take on the competition.
I tried a German course but couldn't master it.
With a new 1.6 16-valve engine, side impact bars, and a new body, it's the shape to be in. The new 16-valve Escorts.
Hello. As we all know, most portable phones you can buy are made flat. So the earpiece goes next to the ear, and the mouthpiece goes next to the mouth. See? However, Motorola make a phone like this. Well, as far as I can see, it's only really suited to people who look like this. Nah, it'll never catch on. If you want to try one for yourself, dial 100 and ask for free phone London car telephones.
Free phone London car telephones. Beep, beep.
Quickly fry 4 Sainsbury's chicken breasts in a pan. Meanwhile, peel and halve 8 ounces of shallots and put 1 tablespoon of olive oil in a casserole dish. When the chicken is just golden, transfer to the casserole, add the shallots, season with salt and pepper, and pour over 1 bottle of Sainsbury's passata. Now sprinkle on some chopped fresh thyme, keeping a little back for later. Then place the uncovered dish in a moderate oven. Now slice 1 yellow and 1 green pepper and count out about 12 pitted olives. Remove the casserole after 30 minutes, stir in the peppers and olives, and return to the oven for another half an hour. When ready, sprinkle over the remaining thyme and serve with Sainsbury's hot herb bread. Delicious.
Sainsbury's, everyone's favourite ingredient.
When Italians wrap praline and roast hazelnuts in fine milk chocolate, they call them baci. I call them yummy.
Discover Freixenet. The picture on your TV is built up of horizontal lines which flicker and are likely to disturb the images on your screen. On a new Philips 100Hz digital scan television, that doesn't happen. The new Philips 100Hz flicker-free technology gives you a visibly clearer picture. Now, let Philips open your eyes.
Tonight's main stories are the French Prime Minister has threatened to veto the trade deal struck between the EC and the United States. Earlier today in Brussels, the European Commission backed the agreement. On now, and it seems that miners are leaving their industry in droves. Since the controversial announcement of pit closures by British Coal, 5,000 miners have volunteered to go, and not only from those pits which are due to close. ITN's Greg Wood has that story.
Union leaders received a raucous reception in the Yorkshire coalfields, breaking with 120 years of tradition to hold their first General Council meeting outside London. The call for a general strike over pit closures met with little sympathy. And here at Silverhill Colliery in Nottinghamshire, miners are already voting with their feet. The pit's among the 10 originally scheduled for immediate closure. So far, 1 in 6 of the workforce have opted for voluntary redundancy. This miner left early to work for half the money in a clothing factory.
I didn't want to be left out in the cold. I've got my wife and family to think about. I mean, British Coal and the government haven't thought a great deal about the miners' families. We've got to think about them.
At Silverhill this morning, the latest group of miners was counselled about the decision to take voluntary redundancy. Only one changed his mind.
We had a job, I had nothing. See, that money not last you forever. And so I thought I might as well keep on, get that £140 what I'm getting, and then wait till after Christmas.
The unions say miners are being blackmailed into voluntary redundancy by threats they'll lose their entitlement if they take industrial action. Here at Markham Colliery in Yorkshire, some miners have actually asked for their jobs back.
They believed that it was going to be a compulsory redundancy, and as the way things are happening now, it's turning out that that might not be the case.
On Merseyside tonight, miners and supporters continued the protest, this time over coal imports. The boss of one of the regional electricity companies said today that more coal could be used to generate electricity. And figures showed that miners set new productivity records last week. But for many of them, it's already too late.
A teenage girl rings a radio phone-in program and says she's lonely. A man rings in. The radio station gives the girl his phone number. She agrees to a blind date and is assaulted and raped. Howell Jones has more on that disturbing story.
Choice FM 96.9.
The 17-year-old girl called a late-night phone-in looking for friendship. She was lonely, she told the listeners of this radio station in South London. She wanted to meet Mr. Right. Within minutes, the DJ's phone rang. A young man offering a blind date. Choice FM passed on his number to the teenager. The next night, she travelled to London from her home in Kent and came face-to-face with her date at Brixton Tube Station. She was taken to a house in this street, assaulted by her date, stripped naked by a second man, raped by a third.
Well, I think this is a particularly horrendous offence where a young girl, perhaps a little naive, has been subjected to a very humiliating experience by 3 men.
In a statement, Choice FM's managers say they're deeply concerned about the incident and are extending their sympathies to the young victim. Sympathy too from radio's watchdog, but no rules on handling listeners' telephone numbers.
There isn't a precise rule which prevents licensees from passing on the numbers of third parties to callers who express an interest. And perhaps there should be one, and that's something that authority members are going to have to consider very soon.
The Radio Authority's guidelines could be updated within weeks as a result of this horrific blind date. Howell Jones, News at 10, Central London.
Scotland Yard told ITN tonight that women on blind dates should preferably not go on their own and they should try to keep to public places. Other news now, 50,000 civil servants could find themselves replaced by outside contractors because of the Citizens' Charter. Mr. William Waldegrave, the minister in charge of the Charter, said today that to get better value for money, private companies would be allowed to compete for work worth £1.5 billion. Gerald Ratner has cut the last connection he had with the high street jewellery chain, which is named after him. Today he resigned from the board. Earlier this year, he resigned as chairman of Ratner's. And the 12-year-old Somali boy was knocked down and killed today by a police car in Manchester. Malin Abdul Qadir's family came to Britain 3 months ago to escape the famine sweeping their country. The police car which killed Malin was going to investigate a mugging. Earlier tonight on News at 10, we saw the strength of French opposition to a new EC-American trade deal. But trade and exports are vital to Britain too. The Trade Minister Richard Needham said today that the government had to try harder, but he said so did industry. For tonight's Focus in Britain, ITN's been investigating how hard British industry has been trying. Here's Julia Somerville.
In only a few weeks' time at New Year, the single European market starts and we'll be in it. A lot of customs formalities and bureaucracy will go, and it'll be easier for British companies to sell to the EC, but easier too for Europe to sell to us. ITN commissioned a special survey by the business information group Dun & Bradstreet to see how prepared British industry was for the challenge. It found that most companies were scarcely giving it a thought, with only about 1 in 8 arranging any special training for export staff. So, is Britain ready for Europe? Tonight's Focus report is by our industrial correspondent, Stephen Cape.
They eye up British industry with increasing interest. European competitors waiting for the recession to end here. But for many UK companies, there's no extra cash to risk on finding new markets abroad when business is tough at home.
We made efforts to find out about Europe by getting consultants in, which were willing to market us in Europe, but the cost was horrendous, between £500 and £900 a day.
Britain prides itself on being an exporting nation. In less than 6 weeks, European trade barriers will be stripped away, presenting new opportunities. But many British firms still remain dangerously complacent as competitors edge forward to take business off them. Nowhere is it seen more clearly than at UK trade exhibitions. A Spanish wood-cutting machine turns out knobs by the dozen. European companies compete for business alongside homegrown manufacturers. There may be a recession on the continent, but the Europeans are still poised for the upturn here.
When the building is good, the houses are built, then we sell machines. No building, no machines, generally.
Some British firms can see the danger signals and plan to fight back. The managing director of this Suffolk office furniture maker believes there'll now be intense competition as more European firms move in.
In the medium term, I think things are quite tough during this change. And our focus has to be on getting our costs as low as we possibly can.
ITN asked the business information group Dun & Bradstreet to question 771 small and medium-sized British companies about their readiness for the single market. There were some alarming findings. 89% of companies didn't fear competition from Europe. 38% didn't seek any advice or help on exporting their goods. The most worrying figure, Only 13% provided external training for export staff to compensate for lack of skills.
We have a major problem of complacency as far as British industry is concerned in the run-up, in the last few days, literally, before we become part of the single market. The fact that most companies, the largest proportion, do not see a threat to their business is frightening.
They call it Wake Up to Europe. Here at Derby University, business leaders have the chance to find out about the single market and the skills they need.
What about languages and skills? Do you have anything at the moment?
I think we've got a bit of skill, but not much language.
No, I think I'm a bit old in the tooth to start learning them now.
Very bad French, and I tried a German course but couldn't master it.
The Dun & Bradstreet survey found bureaucracy was the main obstacle to Europe, less paperwork for customs, but more for industry. But the paperwork has not defeated this trailer manufacturer, which sees exports as the key to survival in a recession.
Too late, we're reacting to the foreigners over there. We're trying to do it, but very much so on a piecemeal fashion. A lot of people in this industry are finding it very tough.
When Britain signed the Single Market Agreement in 1986, it was supposed to herald a new era for free trade. For some businesses in the UK it will, for many prospects look grim. Too much profit-taking in the 80s and short-term thinking could result in them missing the European boat. Stephen Cate, News at 10, Felixstowe.
The single European market has implications beyond those of industry. From January, there'll be no limit on how much alcohol, tobacco and perfume you can bring back from abroad. I'll be back on Friday with another Focus on Britain.
Some sports news now. Desert Orchid, the famous racehorse, has had a major operation. He's been given intensive care after 3 hours of surgery to cure a twisted gut. His vet said the next week would be critical, but that the operation had gone well. And finally, a group of clowns went to Heathrow Airport today, armed with nothing more than a fine show of anger and a generous supply of custard pies. Their intended target was an American clown who they think has stolen from under their red noses a plum job here. Shankar Gur explains all.
The show must go on, and tonight it did, despite a bruising row which saw the clowns wielding their heavy weapons at Heathrow Airport this morning. The reception committee wore red noses and daft bow ties. But it was a media circus that confronted an unknown and dazed American clown, here to do a Christmas turn for a British circus, because...
There's one or two very good clowns in England. There's an awful lot of clowns that aren't very funny. And when I say that, I don't just mean not funny. I mean not funny for the circus. You know, I mean, there might be great children's entertainers.
Outside, a group of British clowns, worried by rising unemployment, was having a sense of humour failure.
He says we're useless, we're unfunny, and he feels he has to import foreigners who are funny. I don't think the foreigner will be as funny as the British clowns.
She might have been jet-lagged, but the imported American took up the challenge. Dressed for battle, she unleashed her secret weapon.
It's this. Funny bone.
British clowns are upset because they say they've served Mr. Cottle well enough over the years. At his touring circus, the jury that really matters is already taking sides.
We should look after our own first before we import clowns, shouldn't we? I've never seen an American clown. What do they do?
What's the matter with our clowns? Soon as say any like, you know what I mean?
The clowns even threatened strike action until they realised they didn't have a trade union. Some militants, though, are going their own way.
2 of them have already walked out on this circus in protest, leaving the show with its own crisis at Christmas. Audiences over the upcoming festive season may not be amused. Shankar Guha, News at 10 at the Big Top.
And that's News at 10 tonight. I'll be here again tomorrow. I hope you'll join me then. Good night.